Before starting the video off, big shout out to Professor Melanie. Thank you for giving us a very fun, nourishing semester full of learning. Also, I'm not a professional drawer. I just want to do something that's rather out of my comfort zone. Welcome to what I would like to call the Durack Deep Dives. I am Deanne, your lead diver for today, as we will dive into many different points within this video. I will give a small recap on the case, the 5 articles I chose, how I chose those articles, why I chose those articles, my thesis, how the articles are related to my thesis, revealing what I would do differently for this project, and my sources. Before fully diving into depth, let's kick back all the way to February 23, 1901. On this very night, Jeremiah Durack was shot in the forehead and died at the river station in Western Australia. Patrick, the son of Jeremiah, woke up with a burning sensation and checked on his father, just to find out he was dead right there on his bed. Scared, Patrick trekked 70 miles, which is around 112 kilometers, to Windham, to collapse at the police station. Fast forwarding 10 days later, 2 boys were brought in, Omaranga, also known as Banjo, and Rochi, also known as Roger. These 2 were put up to trial, where the final verdict for Banjo was acquitted, while Roger was found guilty and had to spend time imprisoned. The following information from this recap came from the Daily News that was published on February 9, 1933, just around 32 years after the initial event took place. Some other articles I chose are the Albany Advertiser, issued on March 19, 1901, another Daily News, issued on May 8, 1901, Western Mail, issued on May 18, 1901, and the WA Record, issued on May 18, 1901. All 5 of these articles came from this website that some of you may know, called Trove. Trove is a website where it stores thousands of historical recorded items, one of those things being newspaper articles. How I chose articles. When choosing the articles, I first went to the advanced search option, then typed out Jeremiah Durack murder. The first few articles that popped up were not lengthy enough for my liking, so I scrolled down a bit until I found the WA Record article. This article essentially gives a recap on the trial of Banjo and Roger. Then I liked the idea of the article covering the trial, so I changed my keywords to Jeremiah Durack trial instead. From there, I scrolled down and read articles that hopefully gave a different perspective on the trial until I ended up having 4. For my remaining article, I wanted to see the trial from a different perspective again, but from a different date. So I changed the date range to only show an article that was published from 1930 to 1939. Why I chose my articles. At first, I wanted to choose 5 different articles from 5 different decades and go more in depth with the language that was used throughout the years. But I changed it up a bit and ended up doing 4 articles that covered the basis of Banjo and Roger's trial around the time it was happening, and one article that looked back at the trial and how they recapped it several decades after. The overall theme was mainly on the trial of Banjo and Roger, while also remembering to bring up the other main subjects, which are Jeremiah and Patrick Durack. Also with these articles chosen, I did not want a simple, short article that barely recaps anything, like what I have encountered within the first few searches on my first few attempts. So what is the takeoff from here? What is my thesis exactly? My thesis was found after examining the 5 articles more in depth and reworded shortly after my peer review came back. Here is my thesis. An examination for Western Australian newspaper coverage during the trial and after the conclusion on May 9 shows that Banjo and Roger were misleadingly depicted as cold, calculating murderers driven by a desire for possessions, despite the lack of evidence that they held any personal hatred towards the victims. So how did I take this approach? With the Albany Advertiser, the article used words that really emphasized the motives of the accused, like intent to inflict grievous bodily harm, for example. This article also emphasizes that these 2 were the murderers long before the actual sentencing. The Daily News article that was published on May 8 describes the accused in diminishing terms, treats the accused as if they were already guilty, and the narrative of this article infers malicious intent on the accused's part. In the Western Mail, it showcases how the newspaper shaped a one-sided narrative on the accused and also misled the public on the intentions of Banjo and Roger. For the WA Record, it demonstrates how even after the trial, the speculated myth about Banjo and Roger is everlasting, and how the public still perceives them as strange character. Finally, the remaining daily news article that was published in 1933 re-insists a heroic narrative for the Duracks, glorifying the family, while still perceiving Banjo and Roger as the murderers with ill-like wording decades after. What I would do differently for this project is a lot, actually. One, I would try my best to reword many different terms that were used in my paper due to repetition, which was a common issue found within my analysis. Second, I would switch out the Albany Advertiser article and change it to a much more lengthy piece of news. I personally thought at first it would be nice to showcase a small article, but as I was doing my research, I was not the biggest fan of this short passage, despite the straightforward statements they have. Lastly, I would just need to proofread just about everything I wrote down, and actually give myself time with this analysis. When writing my first copy, it was rushed, incoherent, and information was missed here and there. This was not my best work, I admit, and I am very sorry to my peer reviewer as well as the professor for giving them such a hard time with reviewing my paper. One thing that is undeniable with this analysis, though, is that there are some good observations every now and then, in my opinion at least. And here are my sources. I appreciate that you stuck through this deep dive with me. Does anyone want to dive into any questions?